Hey all, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time you are encountering this video. Let me turn down the Velvet Underground. In fact, let's pause them and get right down to some business here. We want to talk about the second stage of your writing process. As we've been discussing, one of the things that you take away, one of the activities or strengths that you take away, skills, it's called skills, that you take away from this class is a writing process that you can use to write about anything in an academic atmosphere, as well as probably in a professional atmosphere as well. Whatever the demand is, we need a writing process that can help us beginning, middle, and end. So we don't all just pile our activities up at the end and end up frustrated and not saying the things we wanted to do and so on and so forth. So we want to take our process one step at a time. As we talked about in an earlier video, the first step of the process is annotating the professor's instructions, her question, and the text you were asked about. So we need to make sure that we follow through on that first step, because that first step makes the rest of this process quite possible. Without that first step of annotation, you're going to be lost. You're not knowing exactly what you're looking at. And every time you turn a page, you lose your place because you've not annotated. So we need to be on top of annotation. It is singularly the most important early activity in writing a college essay. It ends with us just making sure that we understand the text we were asked about. The earliest definition of freshman composition that I ever encountered, and it's been true since I took it in 1981, is write about the writing. So you really want to break that writing down in terms of annotation and notes, and maybe you need sticky post-it notes and a notebook and so on and so forth. We hit in that notebook or on the page in Young her keywords. We want to pay attention to verbs because verbs imply somebody's doing something. And there's a key to critical thinking, isn't it? Is the ability to explore who's doing what for what reason. And that breakdown allows for critical reasoning and critical input. And then we also notice structural elements. This is singularly the most important part of your annotation, is to make sure that you emphasize the very things on Young's pages that I'm telling you to do with your own writing on your own pages. That is, focus on topic sentences, structural elements. 4B, note the structural elements, particularly the topic sentence. The topic sentence says, be on top of that. And then we also want, as we get ready to answer the question, we want to make sure we're keeping track of any hard details that come up. For instance, the author will be showing you things, giving you examples of things, giving you numbers, measurements of things. You need to figure out why those are coming up within the author's framework. And if you can keep track of the hard details, as 4C implies, you are keeping track of the author's main arguments. You are knowing that for that statistic matches or doesn't match, for that matter, that topic sentence. We want to know whether it's matching or not. And that's why we annotate. And that's why the last stage of annotation for me is just making sure that the facts make sense. If they don't, maybe it's my problem. Yeah, maybe it's the author's problem. You have to write to find out. That would be good. All right, so after we finish our annotation stage, we move on to the second stage of our writing, which is the experiments in topic and focus. We want to use as many tricks as we can here to fill out answers. We want as many answers to the teacher's question as possible to the extent that when you sit down and do your free writing, it should be a free writing about the question you were asked and coming up with every potential answer to the question that you were asked. Fill the page with answers in your free writing. Don't worry about grammar or spell check. Do it in your native language. Everything. Mix it all together. You will extract it and move it around once it's down, because you can play with it when it's on a page, as our dog demonstration. I read you a list of dogs, you'll remember. That demonstration indicated this very direction. Free writing and brainstorming comes then after rereading that question. You know, you orient yourself towards the text, but then, and understanding everything that Young's got to say, but then there's this issue of, I only asked you about a slice of it. So you want to reread the question to know which slice I'm asking you about. Then we try topic experiments. We produce experimental thesis statements. We see how they work, whether they work or not. All right. We see here our further steps. We see here our further steps. That once we have a pool of potential answers, we can follow any answer we particularly want down any particular rabbit hole without ever fearing we will lose our place, lose the substance of our argument. We may need to reread that question several times as we work our way through the topic and point of view experiments. But we're looking for our best angle, our best argument. If your teacher were to ask you agree or disagree, this is where you break down an agree section and a disagree section. So we'll be on top of all the potential answers, and we can dig down anywhere without losing our place. I'm a big fan of columns. You know, I've been using columns since day one with ideas and proofs left and right. So we'll want to stay on top of that. We could do a set of categories just based on pulling information from your free write and declaring it to be an idea, or putting it in the proof column. So you can pull information, move it around, and try and relate it. Is there an idea at one point in the free write, and later in the free write an example of that idea? This is where we bring them together at this stage. We are looking to create a working thesis. We may need to do a little bit of background research to help us with this thesis. Depends on what you were asked and the texts that were required. That'll be clear in your instructions and in your question. And we came up with, here's a list of 6. There's a list of, actually a more complete list of 11 under your discussions tab. This list of 11 can be found under thesis specifications. Yeah, there's the 11 of them, but the 6 essential ones are listed here, A through F. Structure, make sure that there's no facts or information or quotations in it. Establish a position that you can defend by playing show and tell. Use relational language, not the word and or as well as or additionally. Relate your parts. Phrase exclusively. Make sure that it really is about your topic by taking your topic out and putting in a related topic. If your thesis is still true, even though you substituted a related topic, your thesis is not disputable. It's not really about your subject, as our airplane crash demonstration gave you, which is on this page, actually. All right, so what we arrive at now, after we have our working thesis is we've gotten what we're arguing. Now the question becomes how we're going to argue it. You can have the best argument in the whole world, but if you do not present it logically and in a flowing, natural manner, you're going to end up confusing your reader, and your reader won't buy into even the best thesis. So we need to be aware of that. So what follows then is the outline stage or the strategy stage. You've now got to start thinking about where you're going to put specific pieces of information in relation to topic sentences. So what we're going to produce is a working outline. We try experiments in our presentation. We try to exclude and include our options, just as we did with our thesis when we were looking at what we were going to argue. Now we do presentation experiments. In other words, we're including and excluding organization, how to argue options. We are finding how. And I want us to look at a generic outline so we can see this. Here we go. This is what we're going to produce. This is nothing fancy. It's really an overview, as a good outline should be, a good working outline should be. It's an overview of the body paragraphs with every topic sentence listed, plus each support following it, okay? So we have this Levy outline from Diana Hacker. This is not a paper you are reading, but you can see the way this outline is literally put on the page. And this is the kind of outline that you need at this point. After you've created the thesis statement, don't go and create your outline or your conclusion. Don't go create your introduction or conclusion. Go to your outline. And you will notice that the outline doesn't conclude the intro and conclusion. You need to be on top of that. This outline simply says this is a 3-paragraph essay, and it presents to us 3 topic sentences right after the Roman numeral. Now, we don't need to worry about the Roman numerals and the capital letters and the small letters and the numbers and all that rigmarole. What we're really trying to do is give ourselves a visual map of our essay with every body paragraph nailed down by its topic sentence, its proof, and its major point of discussion. That's what we need to do in every single body paragraph. And at the top of our outline, we simply write the thesis. We do not worry about the intros and conclusions. You can't write an intro or conclusion until your body is actually written, or at least extensively planned. So this is what your outline will look like. Thesis on the top, and then every body paragraph gets its topic sentence, its proof, and its point of discussion. This is what we're trying to do. How many body paragraphs does a work take? Does an essay take? This is where you find out. This is where you find out if this is a 5-paragraph essay with the intro and conclusion, or 7 or 27. It's in the outline that you come to this conclusion. The outline based on your created thesis statement. All right, back at it. So we're doing presentation experiments, and there are 2 theories of presentation. One is historical and scientific, and the other is more of an organic, springing from the moment tactic, responding to what's going on immediately kind of tactic. So in classical rhetoric, which comes from the ancient Greeks, there was a sense that arguments within arguments were judged relatively, that you could look at a person's arguments and break down the inherent value of their reasoning within their own framework, so that we could look at 3 reasons in an essay and limit or categorize them as good reason, better reason, best reason. This is the kind of thing that the ancient Greeks loved to do. And they turned argument into a spectator sport, a science with rules and laws, okay? Well, some of these rules and laws produced a way of thinking about arguments that made them relative to each other. That anytime you have a 5-paragraph essay, you're going to have, for instance, a good reason, a better reason, and a best reason. So the organization question, according to the ancient Greeks, was, do I do the good reason first? Do I do the best reason first? Do I do the better reason first? How do I arrange these? There's that word. How do I arrange these? And that's all we do when we are creating the outline. So I would ask you to pause this demonstration here for one moment after I ask you this question and think it through. All right, so you're looking at your own outline. You have a good reason, you have a better reason, you have a best reason. Where does the best reason go? In the outline, you're going to supply the best reason. You're going to do it right after the intro, which would imply your readers are freshest and more attuned to your arguments early in an essay. Or you're going to do it before the conclusion, which would indicate readers remember what they last read. This is what the ancient Greeks argued. Where are readers noticing? What do audiences notice, and when do they notice, and how do they respond? So I would ask you to pause this video and work it out. Where would you put the best reason in relation to the other two? Would you go good, better, best? Would you go best, good, better? Would you go better, good, best? How would you arrange this argument from an abstract point of view? Pause your presentation here and work out which one you want to do. You want to go good, better, best, best, good, better. What is it you want to do? And why? What does it tell you about how you're thinking about your reading and your reader's reading? What does it tell you about intentions? What does it tell you about what they know versus what they don't know? How are you going to order these reasons within an essay outline? All right, so think it through and come back when you see me pop open the window frame here and we will discuss. Well, for those of us who played with this good, better, best reasoning, what we revealed about our answer when we think about how we're going to order this material, again, reflects what we think about when we're thinking about how our audience will take the information in and process it. Good, better, best, best, better, good, good, say best, good, better, whatever it is, whatever your reasoning is, you're making assumptions about your reader, and that's healthy. You need to imagine your reader always as you're writing your essays. You need to know what your audience knows versus what they don't know. All right, but we can break it down internally like the Greeks did. By their science, you should save the best reason for last or put the best reason first. But let me just point out to you what I tell my students about good, better, best reasons. When I come across 3 reasons like this, and one's good, one's better, and one's best, it's kind of like the Goldilocks thing, right? I always tell them, just write the best. Yeah, fuck good reason, better reason. Just write the best. That's your best foot forward, isn't it? So we want to be on top of that. And my answer to which order would I use, good, better, best, is I'd only use best. And I'd break that down into multiple paragraphs, as many as it required. And this is where I plan that. This is the outline for that. There are also more organic patterns that I want to cover, though, because I think these patterns, these outlines, are a lot more useful to us in what we are doing. What we're trying to do here with an organic pattern is focus on the needs and knowledge gaps of the audience and reader. So we should reveal our answers, our reasoning, based on what the reader knows, as opposed to good, better, best, so on and so forth. We should be thinking about what the reader knows, what the reader needs to know, where the reader has knowledge gaps. Do we need to fill in those knowledge gaps before we get around to making our arguments? You know, if you're making an argument about depression, it might make sense to define psychologically from a psychiatric dictionary or psychological website. It might behoove us to define depression exactly. Before we can make arguments about the causes of depressions or solutions to depression, we would need to tell people what depression is. We need to define it scientifically. And the question is, what do your readers need to know first? What ideas flow next from that initial background information? The one that I want to point out to you, the thesis that I want to work with, is the one at the bottom of the page. So we have this thesis down at the bottom of our page, along with some presentations that are very useful, some video presentations. Please click on those links when you have some spare time, and you can have your notebook open to teach you some new things about the writing process, such a fundamental part of English 1. All right, so we're given this thesis. Think about this thesis, and let's declare an audience. Let's say that this is for California high school students in the 21st century. So our thesis is this: the Watts riots of 1965, a major revolt that killed dozens and destroyed billions in property, was the result of California's racist housing laws. Okay, so we got a couple of working parts here. We've got this event, the Watts riots of 1965. And we're going to say that this event was the effect based on the cause of California's racist housing laws. Well, if you're to make this argument correctly on the page, you need to plan what you would inform readers of first, knowing what they know and knowing what they don't know, or at least imagining, putting ourselves in their shoes. California high school students probably don't know a lot about the Watts riots. So my first job here is to spell out the effect. I'm going to go effect cause in terms of my structure of my outline here in this causal analysis. So I'm going to dramatize and measure the Watts riots in a way that defines them as a major revolt. So I've got a story to tell, I've got numbers to provide, numbers of dead, numbers of property, and the way it unfolded, and when the riots finally ended. All of that stuff is going on. I want to spell all of that stuff about the Watts riots out before I introduce the cause, because we want to make sure we're looking at the same phenomena. We want to make sure that in appreciating the racist housing laws, that we all are understanding what the Watts riots were and how racist housing laws played a role in creating these terrible riots in 1965. So this essay will begin by defining and proving that the Watts riots were a major revolt. Indeed, right after the intro, or maybe even in the intro, I will tell the full story and measurement of the riot. Then, for the majority of the paper, I will argue for a single cause: California's racist housing laws. This is how we do this. So let's talk then about, so this indicates organic pattern. This is where I'd rather have you write than worry about good, better, best in the old Greek way of doing it. I want you to think about what your audience knows and what they don't know. For instance, there will be no reason to background for any of us about the Vietnam War. We're all reading Young's book. So there'll be no specific section where you tell the story of the war. No, you want to tell the story of the war to suit a point of view. You never just blankly tell it. You just never blankly just present it. You always present it within an ideological or an opinionated framework, something disputable. So that's where we are when we look at that Watts Riot 65 thesis statement. I've got a very nice outline presentation. We'll do this for the next 5 minutes or so. I like this presentation a lot. This is more about outlining, and this is some strategies on physically doing it, like the Roman numerals and all of that, but also about just how to think about your outline. I really like this stuff. So take a listen to this.
An outline is a tool to organize your thoughts about a topic or question. Like a graphic organizer, it helps you to visualize your ideas. But unlike graphic organizers, which can quickly become crowded when details or longer thoughts are added, outlines provide a flexibility that easily accommodates multiple main ideas and details, including quotations and longer explanations. An outline is in many ways like a first draft, but outlining helps us to think through the organization and flow of ideas before we go to the trouble of writing. By removing the burden of writing incomplete sentences, constructing effective paragraphs, using transitions, and so on, an outline lets you focus on just the organization of your ideas. For many writers, setting aside the time to outline before writing makes it more likely that your written essay has a structure that a reader will be able to easily follow. And of course, the better a reader can follow your ideas, the more likely it is that your writing will be successful at explaining whatever it is you're writing about. So how do you make an outline? Well, if you're familiar with outlines, you will have noticed that we just made one a moment ago. An outline uses the combination of labels and indentation to show how ideas are organized. First, Roman numerals are used to label the main ideas. Under each main idea, capital letters are indented one level and used to label the supporting ideas. The details or examples that back up each of these ideas are indented an additional line, labeled with a number, and placed under the supporting idea. Lastly, any additional information about a detail or example is indented one more level, labeled with a lowercase letter, and placed under the detail it refers to. Though it might look confusing if you're new to outlining, with a little practice, making one is rather quick and simple. Just remember, use both labels and indentation to show the relative importance of each idea and where it belongs in the structure of the paper. Ideas are labeled in Roman numerals, then capital letters, then numbers, and then lowercase letters to indicate their level of importance. Less important details are indented more so that they fall underneath the ideas they support. Together, this creates an easily readable map that organizes all of your ideas and details before you start writing. Now let's practice outlining by making an outline about something we already know.
Let me pause it here and just use what's up on the screen very briefly. Listen, this is where you are thinking about things like, let's say you're writing a paper about unemployment, and you have a story for your paper. It's an amazing story. It's a powerful story about a young man by the name of Joe, and Joe is unemployed, and he's about to lose his house, and his family is deeply troubled because they're struggling so bad with unemployment. So you have this story about Joe, the unemployed man. But you also have a statistic about unemployment. 27% of men like Joe, who are African Americans, say, are unemployed at the moment. 27% is one feature that you can hit on. It's information you can certainly supply for your reader, and you would want to for context. But what about his story? If you've got the statistic, how does the story fit together with the statistic? Which do you present first? How do you move from the story to the statistic, or vice versa, statistic to story? How do you do that? That's why you're looking at the outlines just like this. Anyway, let's let her continue.
like the
Sorry, him.
describe, relate, interpret process we introduced in the Looking at Art video. First, let's title this outline Looking at Art. The easy part in this case is the main ideas, because we already have them: describe, relate, and interpret. Let's start with describe and work our way down the outline. In the describe step, we are supposed to first answer the question, what do you see? So this is the first supporting idea. When answering this question, we're supposed to focus on all those elements of a work: color, line, shape, and so on. So these are the details. Now, after answering the question, we're supposed to make a list. This is the second supporting idea, so we'll label it B and place it next. Now for the relate step. We're supposed to ask, how do the parts interact? So that will be our first supporting idea here. And we're supposed to focus on how the characters and forms are interacting and how the characters and setting are interacting. So we'll add those as our details. Then we're supposed to answer the question, where is your attention focused? But since that's a new question and not part of the question, how do the parts interact, we'll make that a new supporting idea. Since we don't have any details to put under it, we can move on to our next main idea. And this is the interpret step. We're supposed to ask, what are the characters doing? So we'll go ahead and make that our first supporting idea. And because we're supposed to tell a story as part of that question, we'll make tell a story a detail. Then we're also supposed to ask the question, what does the artist want us to understand or feel? Since that's a new question, we'll make that a new supporting idea. And that's it. That's our outline of the describe, relate, interpret process. We didn't have to write full sentences. We didn't have to worry about making paragraphs or using correct grammar. All we had to do was worry about structure. And now we have a map that lays out the process for us. And if we wanted to, it would be really easy to write it out in full sentences and paragraphs. And we'd probably be clearer and more concise than if we had jumped straight to writing.
The main benefit of the outline when you get to drafting, which is our next video in this series on the writing process, the main strength for me when I outline is it gives me entry points beyond the introduction. I can look at my outline and go, you know, it was really easy to plan that paragraph number 3, and then turn around and just write paragraph number 3 first. That's going to be a trick we're going to learn at our next stage, the drafting stage. But we want to have a working outline, a basic outline. It doesn't need Roman numerals and letters and all of that. It just has to spell out your thesis at the top. And each topic sentence and its support and discussion for every body paragraph you plan on. That's where we're going to be here. And like I said, the outline is going to distinguish between where you tell stories and where you present statistics, and how you move from statistic to story or story to statistic. You know, do you have multiple examples within a body paragraph, or are you just using one strong example, one real serious story? Again, this is where you plan that out. And the next step then is to draft. Yeah, so you have your draft outline here, your sample outline here. Let's move on, and on our next video, we will be discussing how we turn an outline into a paper. Okay, guys, we will see you soon.